Good afternoon. Welcome to another video on the Luderco Arms channel. So today we are going to be working on the Cherokee, and we're going to be redoing the transmission lines with PTFE or Teflon braided hoses with 6 AN fittings. And the reason we're doing that is because if you've seen the previous video, I added an oil cooler up under the front of this. See where my light's under there. So we added an oil cooler and experimented around with which hoses we were going to put the oil cooler in and stuff. And you can see this has all been just cut into the hoses that were already on here and clamped in a temporary fashion on barbed fittings, just to for the experiment. And in doing this, we figured out, or I figured out, how I want to mount the cooler. So the way this is going to work is on the AW4 transmission on the Cherokee, the front out is the outlet, the front line, and the rear line towards the rear of the vehicle is the return. So we're going to take the oil and we're going to run the line from the outlet here up to our auxiliary cooler, through our auxiliary cooler and out to the radiator, and then back from the radiator back to the transmission. Now the reason that I'm doing it in this fashion, because normally you would mount an auxiliary transmission cooler in the return line going back to the transmission. But doing it this way, we're going to pre-cool the oil before it goes into the radiator mounted cooler. That will prevent the radiator. What I figured out was the this thing never really overheats, but every once in a while when it's really hot outside and you're going up a big hill, it would go a little bit above 210. And I didn't, I wanted to get rid of that. I want to stay at 210 like it's supposed to. Well, I figured out that it was the transmission that was adding that extra heat to the radiator. Now, I've done two things to address that. One, I started shifting this thing into third gear manually rather than let it downshift, which prevents a lot of slipping. So that helps. And then we have this cooler. So by mounting it like this, one, we're cooling the oil down before it goes into the radiator. So then the radiator stays at 210. But we're still getting the 210 degree oil coming out, going back to the transmission, so that you still get the wintertime preheat on your transmission oil. That that's why they say they ran it through the radiator like that. So regardless of all that, what we're going to do today is we're going to build some AN fitting lines. So I've bought some PTFE Teflon braided hose and an assortment of fittings. Now there's some fittings that you have to get in order to make this work with the Cherokee. One of them is this, which is a inverted flare number 6 to a 5/8 18, and that is one of our radiator fittings. And then you also need a what they call a fuel line fitting for the bottom radiator, where the hose goes in the bottom of the radiator. Quick disconnect type. And then to go into the transmission, we've got I think these are them. We've got some of these, which are Let me get my glasses on where I can read it. These are M14 by 1.5 millimeter male metric fitting adapter aluminum alloy, 2 pieces. So basically it's where those pieces get, where the lines go in the transmission and those quick disconnects, it's an O-ring fitting. So these have an O-ring and they're metric on the one side and then AN-6 on the other. You could get all these parts off of Amazon. And then I also have some 3/8 6 AN to 3/8 pipe adapters for my oil cooler. And you can see I have already removed my air box. I've got my intake pipe sticking out there, so that just to give me a little bit more room to get to these fittings where they go into the transmission. So first things first, I'm going to go underneath and start stripping all of the factory lines off, because we're getting rid of them and I need to get them out of all their clamps and everything, and start draining the oil that's in the lines and the cooler out so that we don't make a huge mess. Now I have a video for replacing the transmission lines with the factory ones, and you can search through and find that one if you're trying to figure out how to replace the factory ones. I'm not going to film taking all that loose because none of that matters. I will come back when we start to do all of the stuff to adapt it to work with the AN fittings and the braided hose. So let me get all that stripped out of there and I'll be back. Alright, I've got all of my lines pulled off and out of the way. So the next step is going to be to put the adapter fittings on the various places. Like for instance, here on the transmission cooler in the radiator, we've got to replace these, the top fitting, we've got to replace it with one that will fit a 6 AN line, and then the bottom is a quick disconnect, fuel line quick disconnect from the factory. So what we're going to do is use a fuel line quick disconnect to AN adapter. So first we're going to unscrew this top fitting, which I loosened right before I turned the camera on, and you can see it is an inverted flare fitting, 5/8 18 thread here, but this piece is larger than a 6 AN. So what we've got is right here in this box, we've got an inverted flare number 6 to 5/8 18. Right there. So we're going to screw that in place in this radiator, and that will allow us to attach a 6 AN hose to it. And these inverted flare, they're much like a JIC fitting or other different fittings. They don't use O-rings, and you don't really want to put Teflon tape or anything on them. Now I'm having a little trouble getting this to thread in here. It should. There we go. Guess I wasn't holding my mouth right. So we're going to turn that in there and torque it down. extension. Now we got it. All right, so we're ready there. Now we've got to do that bottom. So down there at the bottom, see if we can get this down in here. Down here at the bottom, you can see it sticking out right there. There's a basically the kind of quick disconnect that comes on fuel lines and such. And since it's down there in that hole, and I can't really show you how it works down there in that hole, what I'm going to do is I have an extra, so I will demonstrate how this fitting works on this extra line. So what I'm talking about are these type fittings here, and if you've been doing this for any length of time, you recognize this. It's got another piece that fits over the top of it with little clips that hold it in place, and then you have to use a tool like this and you push it up in there to release it from release those clips from behind that lip, pop the fitting off. And the fitting has an O-ring in it, and it's built into the end of the old transmission line. So what you have for these type lines is this fitting. So you got 6 AN here, and then on the other end you got this kind of contraption looking. So this unscrews out of here like this, and this piece will go up on here like that. That's why it's got a slot cut in it. And then your piece with the O-ring down inside that fits on here and seals will slide on there like that, and then this piece screws into the back of it, and when it gets all the way down it catches the lip in there, and then you can screw your 6 AN line fitting onto it. So that's what I'm going to do down in that little hole right there, but there's no way I can show it to you down in that hole, so this is how that works. So I'm going to get that one on, and I'll get the two in my cooler on, because they're just 3/8 pipe to 6 AN adapters. So I'll just pull the 3/8 pipe to barb adapters that are in it out, put the 3/8 ones in, we'll be good to go. And then we got the fittings to adapt to the transmission, which I'll bring you back for that part. Once we get those in, then we can start building the lines, get to the good part. So I'll be back. Okay, so I've pulled the two quick disconnect fittings out of the side of the transmission. So that's what they look like. We'll hold on to them because they're still good. And those are going to be replaced with these. Hold on just a second. So if you look at these, you can see the remains of a well overheated O-ring around that. They weren't leaking, but of course once you turn them it tears everything up. So you can see these new fittings are the same threads, and they're an O-ring fitting. So that's the adapter that you have to get. It's got that on the one side and AN-6 on the other, and it's 6 AN male flare to M14 by 1.5 millimeter male metric fitting. That's what it says. And you can see there the pause it and get the serial number off of it. So we're going to screw these into the side of the transmission, and then we'll finally be ready to build our lines. So I will bring you back for that. Okay, let me show you what I've got so far. Hopefully I'll be able to get the camera up in here and you'll be able to see everything. So I've started to run the line going from the outlet on the transmission up to the cooler. So if we get this light shining where we need it, and so we're looking up in here, and here is the AN fitting. I ended up having to use, I was going to use a 90, but I ended up having to use a 45 because a 90 was interfering with the dipstick tube right here. So I used a 45, and we've got it. It's not touching the dipstick tube, it's close. And then we've got that run up along there. I'm going to use the old bracket for the little short arm, short suspension arm up there to tie it down, since I have long arm suspension now. And get you flipped around here with the light. You can see we've got it run right there along the top of the frame rail, over that bracket, and on up to the front, where we will go now to mark it so we know where to cut it. And then we will cut it and put ourselves another fitting on there, which I will show you. I got ahead of myself and did the first fitting and forgot to turn the camera back on, but we're getting there. So we'll grab our creeper. This would be a lot easier if I had a lift, but I don't really have a high enough ceiling for a lift to be a viable option. Get down here where I can show you this other end. So we've got our hose coming down the frame rail there and out here, and right here we've got a fitting loosely put in there. So we just need to hold on. Let's see if I can get it. All right, we got to get the hose back up there where we want it. Keep enough slack in it. Lay it over here, and then we can mark it where we need to cut it to put the fitting on. Right there. So now we can take, we've got our mark on the hose right there, and we can take this fitting back off and take the fitting at the far end back off and bring the hose up on the workbench and cut it and fit this fitting on there and get our first line done. So let me get the hose out from there and to the workbench. Okay, so we're back on the workbench now, and we've got our hose here. We've got our mark we made where we need to cut it. So I've got some masking tape that I have drawn a center line on, we're going to take a piece of that and put it on our mark, put the center line on our mark, and wrap that around nice and tight, like so. And then we can put it on our handy wood block here and take a cut-off wheel and cut it off. Like so. So now what we want to do is take our air hose and make sure to blow all of the debris out of the hose from cutting it. So we don't want that mess getting in our transmission. So now we have our hose cut to length. We can move this over here. And what we need to do now is we've got our other two pieces of our fitting here. Fitting is 3 pieces, so we got our 90, the piece that screws up on it, and then the ferrule. So the first thing we want to do is take this piece, and while we still have the tape on there, go ahead and slide it over like so, so that it's ready to screw back onto the end of your fitting when you have it on there. So stick that on there, let it go down the way there, and then we want to take this masking tape off. And what the masking tape does is keeps all this from getting all unfurled when you're cutting it. So now what we've got to do is take a screwdriver, and you can see here there's the white Teflon hose in the center, and then there's a layer of stainless steel braiding, and then the layer of the poly braiding on the outside of it. And what you've basically got to do is take the screwdriver and start pushing that braiding away from the center hose, and you just got to go around and around it. And I got a little tool that'll stick in the end of it like this to kind of keep it from deforming while I'm doing this. But anyways, don't dig into the Teflon hose, just start working your way around there and pulling all that braided back from the plastic, just like that. Stab yourself in the hand. It's very important. But you've got to go all the way around this thing and get this stuff worked back. And it's kind of a pain in the ass, to be quite honest. But the end result will be worth it. So it's very important to get it all pulled back, every little strand of it, because if you get a strand of that braided cord under there, when you go to put the ferrule on, it'll end up making it leak. So you just got to keep working it. Once you've got it worked around like that, where you can get this ferrule in there without getting any of that trapped underneath it, then you can ease this thing, start easing it on there, and then flip your hose around on your table and push down on it and get that, kind of wiggle it and get that hose pushed down in that ferrule. And you can look, when you get it pushed all the way in, you can look around the edge of it right there and see that that hose is all the way up to the, there's a lip, so you can't push it all the way through. Right? So once you're there, then you can take your little tool. Now this tool came with the hose, and you can kind of do like this, kind of get that all ready for your fitting to go in. So then you twist the fitting down on there till it's like that, just like that. Now take your ferrule piece here, and you need to it says in the directions to oil these threads. Slide the fitting up there and start it onto here, and get it hand tight, and then come over here and stick the bottom half in the vise there. Now you don't want to crimp this. It's just aluminum, so just very, very light pressure, just enough to hold it. And then you get, now I bought the aluminum wrench for these, but you don't have to use that. You can use a regular wrench. And once you get that hand tight, then you're just going to tighten it, tighten that fitting the rest of the way down in there. And you'll feel it when it bottoms. I need to finish tightening this one. And there we go. One AN line. So now we can go in there and stick this up in its spot, and I will tighten this end at the transmission, And this end I will leave loose because I need to make the next line going from the auxiliary cooler to the radiator cooler and put it on because it's the upper one on that cooler, and you can't get to the fitting with the lower one in place. So let me get this laid in there and then we'll make another line. So I'll be right back with that. Once you've got it worked around like that, where you can get this ferrule in there without getting any of that trapped underneath it, then you can ease this thing, start easing it on there, and then flip your hose around on your table and push down on it and get that, kind of wiggle it and get that hose pushed down in that ferrule. And you can look, when you get it pushed all the way in, you can look around the edge of it right there and see that that hose is all the way up to the, there's a lip, so you can't push it all the way through, right? So once you're there, then you can take your little tool. Now this tool came with the hose, and you can kind of do like this, kind of get that all ready for your fitting to go in. So then you twist the fitting down on there till it's like that, just like that. Now take your ferrule piece here, and you need to it says in the directions to oil these threads. Slide the fitting up there and start it onto here, and get it hand tight, and then come over here and stick the bottom half in the vise there. Now you don't want to crimp this, it's just aluminum, so just very, very light pressure, just enough to hold it. And then you get, now I bought the aluminum wrench for these, but you don't have to use that. You can use a regular wrench. And once you get that hand tight, then you're just going to tighten that fitting the rest of the way down in there. And you'll feel it when it bottoms. I need to finish tightening this one. And there we go. One AN line. So now we can go in there and stick this up in its spot, and I will tighten this end at the transmission, and this end I will leave loose because I need to make the next line going from the auxiliary cooler to the radiator cooler and put it on because it's the upper one on that cooler, and you can't get to the fitting with the lower one in place. So let me get this laid in there, and then we'll make another line. So I'll be right back with that. All right, the next hose we got to make is going to be going from the bottom of the radiator to the auxiliary oil cooler, and it's basically going to be 2 of the straight AN fittings. So we've got the end here that we cut before, and we're going to remove the nut and the ferrule from the fitting, and we're going to take the nut and go ahead and put it on the line before we take that tape off. So that's on there, and now we've got to take this tape off. And one thing about this line is it is definitely stiff. You are not going to make any real tight turns with it. That is a fact. Alright, so we've got that off. Now we've got to do just like before. We're going to have to go around it, stab ourselves in the hand a couple of times, and get this braiding away from the Teflon on the inside. So that's widened out. Get the ferrule on there and started and then try to get it pushed down in there. Alright, there we go. We've got our ferrule in place. Now we can take our straight fitting and put her in place and oil the threads and everything up. Find our ferrule that has managed to work its way all the way down the hose. And just like before, we're going to start the threads by hand and then carry it over and put it in the vise. And there we go, we are bottomed out. So now we've got that one done. And now, just like I did with the first line, I'm going to go underneath there and fish this thing up through to the radiator, the bottom radiator fitting for the oil cooler, and hand tighten it on there, and then I can figure out where I'm going to route the line and everything. So let me get that done and I'll be right back. So just like before, I've got my hose marked. I'm going to cut it. Then we're going to take our air. Blow that all out. So we need another straight fitting on this one. Once again, unscrew the nut off the back and take it in the ferrule and set them to the side. Set that to the side, grab this piece, put it on the way it's supposed to go. You want to get that on there prior to when you start pushing the braided part out to get the ferrule on there is what you're doing. So we'll take the tape off, and just like before, we will wrestle with this thing for a little while, stab ourselves in the hand, and get this ferrule put on here. Right. So once again, we'll take our ferrule, get it started on the end there, and push it on down on there. And you can see that our plastic hose is all the way up to the lip on the inside of the ferrule, and we can take our tool and shove it in there and get everything straightened out like so. Then take our fitting, put a little oil on it, slide her on in there like so. Take some more oil and put on the threads. And go to the vise. Tighten that on down using our fancy aluminum wrench. And we've bottomed. There we go. A nice AN fitting line. So I'm going to go put this one on and then make the other one and put it on and get everything buttoned up and strapped up, and then I will bring you back and show you all the lines installed. So we'll be back for that. All right. This took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. The end result is awesome though. I'm really happy with them. But they weren't as quick as I thought they would be. But let's take a look. So I've still got to put my air box back in. But you can see we've got our new AN fittings and our braided line running down, and then light and the creeper. Come down here, and you can see that the lines get this light somewhere. All right, my lines come down from the radiator there, and they are secured to this cross beam for my power steering pump strengthener. So that's not going anywhere, and that keeps them well far away from that front crankshaft pulley. And then the one line that's coming from the transmission, it comes out to here, and you can see we've got our two AN fittings on our oil cooler now. And then the lines run sorry about all the moving around, and the lines come back. I've got these little clips, and they're actually aluminum. I'm surprised. They came with the hose kit. Pretty high quality little aluminum clamps to hold the lines, and they're run along that frame rail on back to let me slide around there. Oh. All right, and you can see up in there they are secured using a tie wrap to the old socket where the upper control arm used to mount before I went to the long arm suspension. And then they come back and they are into the side of the transmission and good to go. So now I gotta spray a little bit of brake cleaner along the side of that transmission and clean all that oil up. Y'all excuse me while I slide out front of the truck again. And then I'll put my air box back in and crank this thing up and let it warm up, run it through all the gears, check the oil, add oil, and be done. But I'm not going to bore you with all that because the part that we were here for, which was adding the lines, has already been accomplished. And I think those are going to work good, and I trust that a whole lot more than I trust a rubber line with a bunch of hose clamps on it. So that should work good for us. Anyways, hopefully this has helped you out. This is the first time I have ever put together those AN fittings on the braided line like that. They're not that hard. Really the only pain in the ass part of it is pushing the old the braided covering on the hose, the stainless steel braid and the poly braid back from the Teflon tube to get the ferrule in place. But once you get that, now you got it whooped. So we'll see how it does, and if there's any problems or anything, I'll be sure to let y'all know. But that's just one of the Teflon hose kits that you can get off of Amazon. I think Evil Energy is the brand name. We'll see how it works. So appreciate y'all watching, appreciate y'all supporting the channel. Please consider liking the video and subscribing, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a good one.